Derivatives trading involves substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results.
So stressful. And world's on fire. Good God. We can't look at this, guys. Like, my strategy is you buy it and you hope that you gotta get some. Yeah, but we all think you're crazy. You don't fight this. No way. The markets are freaking out and you don't think that anything is wrong? Go back tomorrow and I'll lose it all. Should be fun.
Good morning, everybody. I am a little bit late. I feel like I'm getting later and later. I apologize for that. But you know, we've got a retail sales number coming up here in just a second. Man, my headphones don't sound right again to me. I'll fix that. All right, so we are looking for U.S. retail core retail sales month over month, looking for a reading of spot 4.4. All right, and just a brief look at the charts. S&P 500 up quite a bit overnight. Some real risk on here. Treasuries retracing yesterday's move. Oil was up big yesterday, but they're kind of coming back now at the moment. Natural gas on the rise, gold and silver kind of moderating, and copper on the rise too. So I'm not 100% sure what the developments are that are leading to that, but Bitcoin back above 30,000, the dollar crashing. So, and I don't know what we had. When I was reading through my morning headlines, I didn't really see anything in there that made me be like, oh yeah, okay. Futures jump amid optimism. China's COVID lockdowns are ending, I suppose. Is my heater on again? Hold on. No, it's sending me AC. It's sending me AC. Okay, well, we got a minute left. Oh, let's get this out of the way. I'm just going to fan myself here. Treasuries are quite, looking quite schemwampus here. Okay, here we go. Okay, so core retail sales is 0.6 versus an expected spot 4, so it's a little bit better than expected. I don't think that number is so bad that it will have a huge move in the treasuries. I think that should be a positive for the equity market, though. I'm surprised that they're not moving higher. Perhaps they don't like that because that means that interest rates will be rising. The dollar is moving up here. Are seeing some slight upside in the dollar. Okay, and we are getting a Fed speaker now. We have multiple Fed speakers today. Let me see here. Bullard speaking right now. Fed Chair Powell speaks at 2 p.m. Eastern Time at the Wall Street Journal's Future of Everything Festival. Mester speaking later after that. Okay, so we getting Bullard out of the way here at the beginning. So the headline number, the non-core number was 0.9, which was slightly under the expected 1%, but the core, that's X autos, is spot 6. So that means that the consumer is still relatively strong. Okay, well, the treasuries are kind of dumping here. I mean, this I think that the market's interpretation of this, or rather my interpretation of this, would be that retail retail sales are still strong, the consumer is still strong, and so the Federal Reserve can um, stick to its plans to raise interest rates 50 basis points at the next 2 or 3 meetings to get back to even. So I don't see why that has to like decimate treasuries per se. But we are getting a good move. So we're getting close to like weekly lows. Then maybe we could see some puking. So maybe it does make sense to buy it in here. But there's some things. Okay, I was just about to say, well, we could hit into 2.955, but somebody just swept everything there. So, but with Bullard still speaking, I don't know if I actually want to be involved yet. Okay, so I'm now getting some news that the revisions in the retail sales was good too. There you go. Bullard says 50 basis point increases at coming meetings, a good base case for now, meaning the 75 basis point chatter can basically, you can throw it away because it's not happening. Okay, so let's kind of try and take inventory here. Gold is taking a little bit of a hit, as is the 6J and the treasuries. So the whole treasuries complex is all pointed in the same direction, and that is down. Gold, after having a big rally yesterday and a little bit of an extension of that rally overnight, taking a pretty big dive down to start the session, but since the news, rising. Because again, this is positive for the consumer. S&P 500 took an initial spike that was quickly washed away, and a little bit lower and coming back up. Good morning, Oceanic. How's it going? So kind of an interesting setup. We can see the treasuries are kind of reversing here, right? So you kind of see how I played that in the treasuries. Well, I mean, didn't play that. Was like, oh well, okay, it could move. I wasn't gonna trade it. I mean, if I was trading the actual treasuries, maybe I would have. Yeah, my voice keeps cracking. But down here in the micros now, there wasn't enough volume. Okay. But then when we were getting down to the bottom, I was like, well, it is a big move, but we're like at lows, and I don't think that this is like a crazy number or anything like that. So of course they bounce higher. So it wasn't a very good place to try and take a trade. Well, I don't know what happened if I'm not sitting up straight, but like the camera is too low. Think that my camera is actually moving. I probably need to tighten it down. Caterpillar board approves new buyback up to 15 billion. Guess I should probably try and keep an eye on it here. Where did we start at? 08. Okay, so we're about halfway back. Oh, for half being the VWAP, huh? Oh dear, the UK plans to override the Northern Ireland Protocol, scene set for explosive Brexit row with Brussels, says the Independent. Legislation will target European judges and tax powers as well as border checks, fueling risk of a trade war with the EU. That's not a good piece of news. That could lead to a bid in the dollar and the treasuries here. Let's kind of see. I don't think the market knows what to do with it yet. There's not like uh, I'm not seeing a jump or anything, but this sounds to me like a significant announcement that's really kind of unexpected. I really thought we would have a decent TWE book bite. Wouldn't know. Wait, what do you mean by that? Is it a good time to buy the dip? What, in stocks? Well, listen, if you're in stocks, um, in terms of like, you're managing a risk portfolio, I don't know what to tell you there. Okay. But in terms of like your larger investing, like you're investing into your 401k and your IRA and everything, when the market is down really big like this, you should look to put more money in. That doesn't mean that it can't go lower, but when things are tough, the more that you can put in, the better you're going to be in. Oh, the 20-year bond? Yeah, I don't know. The thing is that there's like too many instruments, man. I got enough on my screen already. Why are you trying to get them to get more stuff? Listen, if you're not matching your employer, if you're not contributing enough to your 401k to get your employer's contribution match, start doing that today. If you're already doing that and you're not contributing to your IRA, start doing that today. Seriously. And also, if you don't have a rainy day fund, start putting some away for a rainy day fund. I got to tell you, I mean, I have an affiliate link for this in the video description, but Yada is so good for this because it really makes it fun. And if you sign up for Yada using my code and you put, I think it's $25 in, okay, so you put $25 in, then they give you, both you and me, extra tickets. And the extra tickets comes out to be about between $5 and $15. So you sign up, they're literally going to give you money. And then you don't have to put a ton in it every month, but you just put a little bit in there every month, and eventually you have a pretty good buffer. And then there's a game associated with it where you can kind of get a lottery, or you can like join together in a pool. It's really cool. I think it's fun. Okay, I am just getting now from the Financial Times. Twitter plans to enforce the $44 billion takeover price with Elon Musk. So the news over the past few days had been that Elon Musk was getting a little bit of cold feet over the price that he was offering because of this information that maybe there are more bots on the Twitter platform than they let on. And so he was saying that the price should be lower. Now Twitter is saying, no, we're going to hold you to that. I think that they had already kind of made a deal, so I don't think that he can necessarily just back out of that. Not without paying them a really nasty fee. That's kind of interesting. Okay, hold on. I keep thinking, oh, the heater's on because I'm just really humid and hot. I don't know. I just got out of the shower too quickly. I didn't get time to cool off. Do I look stupid fanning myself? Oh, it feels so good though. Oh, that feels good. Well, we got a ton of we just got a real flurry of news, a bunch of pieces of news that I think are relatively significant, and you know, the S&P 500 has not really moved very much. Good morning. Is everybody showing up today? How's it going, Keller, G59, Tobias? Man. I guess on the other thing on the buying the dip was I put more money to work. I had a lot of cash in my risk portfolio, and I can't tell you what to do with your strategy. I have to say that the drawdown on this last downturn was not very pretty. Last time around I was kind of hedged with oil, but this time around no. Right? So it was kind of painful, but I still had a lot of cash, so I bought some stocks. That was like last week. But I didn't use all of it because I think there's still a scenario where this market continues to jump around until the fall. And so then maybe I put the rest of that to work. Well, I'm really keeping an eye on this dollar here. I think the dollar is the thing to be watching here at the moment. Just given all of the headlines that we got, we got retail sales numbers, we got Bullard was speaking, we got some news that suggests that the UK and the EU are going to go at it, and then we got Elon Musk on the Twitter thing. I don't know how that is going to affect Twitter. I don't think that really affects the index too much, but still something. It's going to be the most followed story, right? So we got a lot happening here, even though the market is kind of like holding tight. So I think that we kind of need to be prepared for something to possibly break. Even though at the moment they look like they're kind of like chilling out. Wow, Indian actress dies after fat-free plastic surgery goes wrong? Ew. Why am I still following Sputnik again? Oh yeah, because the whole Ukraine thing. They never post anything worthwhile. I don't want to follow them anymore. I'm gonna stop following them. Unfollow. They post trash. What are you talking about? The news with the EU? So let's see if Zero Hedge has a story about it yet. No, the story that we had. Where can we go? Let's see. I should be going to Bloomberg because I got the Bloomberg subscription, right? Bloomberg. Hmm. Okay. Well, I don't have anything like it's not posted on the big news websites yet. But if I come back in here, The UK plans to override the Northern Ireland Protocol, which sets a scene for explosive Brexit row with Brussels, says The Independent. Legislation will target European judges and tax powers as well as border checks, fueling risk of a trade war. Oh, okay, so here's the link for the story. I will read you the full story, okay? A new bill to override the Northern Ireland Protocol will target the role of European judges and give EU big tax powers, setting up a momentous clash with the EU. Liz Truss revealed the legislation will go much further than seeking to ease border checks with the Irish, increasing the chances that it will provide a damaging trade war with Brussels. And then that's all you can read without having to sign up. I don't want to do that. Okay, so that's what's going on there. That is significant. The market seems to be ignoring it for now. And I suppose that like the interim knockoff effects, it's not such a big deal. But that's a headline we got to keep an eye on. It could affect the dollar. But so far, we're not really seeing flight to safety into the dollar, are we? And so far, it seems like the dollar is getting crushed, and treasuries are kind of pushing down here. Oh, geez. I'm just hearing Bullard saying, well, we're not sure what the effect of shrinking the balance sheet will be globally. So, like, that's not a confidence inspiring. Personally, I see the index is ripping higher today, but that's somewhat of wish speaking on me. Well, they ripped higher overnight for sure, didn't they? They sure moved overnight. I tell you that much. Something in this room is just making me feel hot. I don't know what the deal is. Anyways, so let me tell you something about this the Federal Reserve that I was thinking about yesterday that is really a significant factor in all of this and that we really completely forgot about. And that was that the Federal Reserve didn't just lower interest rates, they also did a bunch of kind of quantitative easing. They were buying assets. They didn't call it quantitative easing, but they were doing quantitative easing. And they didn't want to start raising interest rates until they had removed everything they had on their balance sheet. So there's this whole thing like, can you raise interest rates before trailing off the balance sheet? And they would just rather not do that. But the end effect of that was that it took them a lot longer to raise interest rates, because at first it was, well, we're going to talk about tapering, and then that was the end of the summer, and then they didn't do it until the August meeting, and then it was like they didn't actually start doing it until like October, all right? And then they did it as quickly as they could, but that left them with the first chance for them to raise interest rates being January, essentially, right? If they hadn't had to do all of that, they could have started raising interest rates last August, right? Kind of a big deal. You went long in the morning. Okay, well, you're in a good spot. I can see, well, so I think that with the S&P 500 above 4050, I'm bullish, but they're probably going to try and test that, There you go. Mohammed El Ran, who, by the way, has been quite bearish, says this is a slowing economy, but this is an economy that is unlikely to go into recession unless we get another policy mistake or market accident. I 100% agree with them. Like, I think that in the past week, my own kind of sentiment about the market has certainly taken a hit, but I'm still kind of I'm not willing to say that the chance of a recession is over 50%. Not willing to say that. Says Bullard, the US will be a reserve currency for a long time to come. Thank you. That's kind of preaching to the choir, though, don't you think? Hmm. Okay, I'm going to reset my DOM here. It's kind of giving us a little bit of a hint there at 0.2 that might be the center of the hole and that they can't push down further. I think that it would be hard for them to crawl back all of the losses that they made. I think that I would rather be a buyer here in the yields, just not at these prices. So what I would rather see is maybe if they came up to 0.405. We'll see. Bullard saying that Bitcoin will have to compete with like everybody else and will need stability. Okay. The Hill White House fires back after Bezos tweets about inflation. Wait, did they fire back again? Or is this just the same stuff that I had seen yesterday? Yeah, okay. So this is a really interesting change in the market. So Jeff Bezos, CEO of Amazon, starts tweeting about inflation. And well, there was a whole spat yesterday with the media as well in the new press secretary's first press conference. And they were arguing about inflation and what Joe Biden was going to do about inflation. And basically, Joe Biden doesn't have a plan. Like, they'll say that that's false and that I'm being partisan here, but the reality is that they really don't have a plan. They're saying, well, we need to tax the rich, and the rich need to pay their fair. That has nothing to do with inflation. Has nothing to do with inflation. Okay, they're still trying to argue that the inflation was not caused by their policies, even though it's pretty obvious to every economist out there that played a factor. And so the Washington Post has kind of been on a campaign of sorts to convince the left that what they're doing is insane. Like they're saying this is what you're saying is so far off from the economic reality underneath that you're doing real harm to your party. And I don't know if this is just Jeff Bezos's personal opinion or what, but that's what you've been getting out of the newspaper. And then Jeff Bezos starts tweeting. Now my feeling when I read Jeff's tweet, hold on. This is a red book that we just got. Okay. My reading is that Jeff is genuinely just like I am when he hears something that's wrong, it irritates him, you know? we tend to be like that. And I think that he thinks that I think that he feels that he has tied his wagon to the Democrat Party, and because he thought that they would be better for business and more reasonable for economic growth, and right now they're not. And so I think he's frustrated by that. The Biden administration is saying, well, he just opposes these policies because they hurt Amazon. No, it has nothing to do with the amount of money that he makes from Amazon, because none of those things have anything to do with inflation, right? Yeah, I suppose that you would oppose policies that, are about transferring wealth and everything, but they ain't going to solve the inflation problem, guys. They're just not. It's just a complete non sequitur, It's a completely unrelated issue they're pushing. Well, we got a little bit of 0.4 and they came back almost immediately, so they didn't really give us much of a chance to do anything. Maybe they push lower without us. The market maker, he's listening right now. He's like, okay, Seth, your wish is our command. Yeah. So Bezos, one of the things that he tweets, they know inflation hurts the neediest the most, but unions aren't causing inflation and neither are wealthy people. Remember, the administration tried their best to add another 3.5 trillion on federal spending. Bezos tweeted, they failed, but if they had succeeded, inflation would be even higher than it is today, and inflation is at a 40-year high. Yeah. So this is an interesting shift. And of course, the Biden administration was already kind of on the shit list with Elon Musk. So you see how the business community, like the business community, everybody always acts like the business community, they're all Republicans anyways, right? But it's really, that's really not the case. The richest people tend to be Democrat, at least right now, because all of the economic growth was on the coastal cities. They're all Democrats, and what they're seeing is, well, okay, the Republicans, they're rednecks, conspiracy theorists. They're not acting in line with reality, and they're not going to be good for business. So we're going to support the Democrats. And then they supported the Democrats, and the Democrats started doing the same kind of stuff with inflation. They came up with all of these conspiracy theories about how it was the evil corporations arbitrarily decided to raise prices on everybody. Hmm. Christopher D. Long, any guess as to what specifically will trigger the tether implosion? I think that to have a tether implosion, you would have to have government intervention. I'm going to respond to him. I hate the term of conspiracy theory, not to say that nut jobs don't exist, but it's a term made with an intent by. No. Well, okay. I think that conspiracy theory is the only word for it, for when somebody comes up with a theory that has no supporting evidence, right? Or like when I say it's a conspiracy theory, basically what I'm saying is somebody thinks that a group or power that be is doing this thing, not because he has actual evidence to pointing to that thing, but because he doesn't like them and he thinks that that's the sort of thing that they would do, or that they would have motivation to do that. But it doesn't have any supporting evidence. Look at that. Okay, so that was a break of the lows. There was a little bit of stop outs there below 119. I'm actually I'm curious to see what happens here, because that kind of action that we just saw there could actually be the sort of thing that like is the end of the end of a move. That could be the end of a move. I think that you're going to get a big liquidity hole here at 119 even. Not that much is traded there yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's going to be the point of control here. Should we? So let's just kind of put that one down here, in like 30 minutes we'll come back and look at it and see how much volume is at 119 even. It's just a slippery slope in general to discredit real criticisms of documented conspiracies by institutions. Well, I think that people can deride something as a conspiracy theory when there is actual evidence, but that's the whole problem, right? Like them spying on Trump, okay? Like that one is totally I was probably the best example of what you're talking about, right? Is that they were spying on him. And in fact, we're finding from the Durham probe, there's like evidence that like the government was hiding documents from Congress, and there was all sorts of malfeasance in there that they're uncovering. And and they all called the theory that they were spying on Trump a conspiracy theory. But it wasn't a conspiracy theory. He was making that accusation based on real evidence that he had. Mm, 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 mm. Yeah, see, that's a good example. It really is, right? But this one, no, like the inflation conspiracy theory, that one is really almost kind of a different breed of thing, right? Because what they're saying basically just contradicts everything about economics and how businesses run, right? Like businesses don't sit there and say, okay, here's how much we can sell the product for, but we're nice, and so we're gonna sell it for a lot less and just not make as much money. They don't do that. They pick the highest price that the market will support. And so this idea that all of a sudden businesses just decided to become more greedy arbitrarily to to screw over people is just the most ridiculous thing. Need to turn a fan on and get more cold air in here because I don't think that we just didn't get enough. It's so when you go on Reddit, it's just hilarious the amount of people pushing this conspiracy theory. Even as the US extends its leading position as a dominant location for Bitcoin mining, China reemerges as the second largest locale despite a government ban on the activity last year. Wait, get one of those mini ones. What are you talking about? A mini fan? I have a fan over here by the door. I could just open the door and blow air in for a little bit. I maybe we should do that because it's really starting to bother me. You know what? I think my my air conditioner is broken. So yesterday evening it turned on and it was making a really loud noise, so I turned it off and then back on, and the loud noise went away. Now it's working, but the air that's coming out of it is not that cool. So and the thermostat says that it is 74 in here. So I think what's happened is my air conditioning is broken somehow. Those mini ones you can. I really want to get like an outdoor swamp cooler, is maybe what I think you could call it, for my garage when I'm working out, because it gets so freaking hot out there. Outdoor evaporative coolers. Yeah, like exactly like that. For 500 square feet. I don't know how many square feet we're talking about, but I'm just going to sit in front of it. So, like this. Like this thing. That's what I need for my garage. Man, I think because the AC is on, it's been blowing this whole time. And it's not really getting cooler in here. So I think that it must be whatever the sound was. It must have been bad. It must have been bad. My hopes that we would just turn it off and I'm back on and it would go away or doesn't seem so good. So probably we need to call the service technician. Maybe someday I should get a heat pump just for this room. But anyways. Okay, well, they did bounce back up back to the 119. Still kind of sitting there. I think that there's a pretty good possibility of further down waves. Wow, there is actually a lot of Fed speakers here today. Apparently, in about 5 minutes, we're gonna get Fed's Harker is gonna be speaking. That wasn't on my calendar. And then, as we mentioned, Powell and Mester, at 2 Eastern time. And then in the evening, we got Evans. So we've got a pretty good slate of Fed speakers right now. Oh, okay. So we do get capacity utilization and manufacturing output in 5 minutes. At the top of the hour, we got the housing market index and business inventories. Okay, Harker's speech is going to be about healthcare, apparently. Oh, hey, that's cool. Yeah, worker statement. That's good stuff. Well, we're not seeing a whole lot trade into 119. We're seeing more of it is trading at 0.0 half. Are they doing that just to make me wrong? There is low latent liquidity there, though. Oof. The liquidity is so low at 31.5. I think that it's quite possible that they break a new low and still push back up to 119 is a possibility here. Yeah, the 5-year is doing it at least. The weekly support. Yeah. I really hate the term support, right? I feel that the support resistance paradigm is an incorrect understanding of markets. It is the weekly low though, yes. But given that it's only Wednesday, right? I don't know if that. No, it's only Tuesday. I don't know if that's that significant, right? Because all we got to do is go back to the 11th, which was only like what, last Thursday? Oh, last Wednesday. Okay. Well, all we got to do is go back to last Wednesday and we had this huge move that was down and back up. Remember that? Remember that? Oh my gosh, what's wrong with me? I can't draw a circle today. Now, what do you think of penny stocks? Most institutions aren't even allowed to trade it, so wouldn't it be a good thin market for a retail trader? Well, not necessarily. So, the issue that you're gonna have is this is a really interesting dichotomy. Okay, so like if you want to do market making strategies, right? You want to be at the top of the queue, so you have to be doing it in a situation where there's not a lot of competition. But um, if there's not a lot of competition, then that basically puts you at more risk of being taken out by an informed trader, right? So this is kind of the issue with penny stocks, is that if you do a market making strategy, then insiders are going to come in and make a move that goes against you, and what are you going to do? There's no way that you're going to be an insider on some of those stocks. Like there's just the information for you that you need to know is just not public. It's just not out there, right? And for that matter, what are you going to use as like a correlated asset and stuff, right? I mean, if you've got something that has a really clear correlated asset that you can trade it against and you can get at the beginning of the queue and you automate a strategy, then great. But there's not really those kinds of opportunities. And so if I was going to trade penny stocks, they do go further. It is a new house, so for the AC to be bugging out is a little concerning to me. But you know what? I had the main pressure regulator, the main regulator. It's 5 years. It's been 5 years. The main regulator, like that comes where the water comes up from the city, and then regulates the pressure for the rest of the house. We had to replace that. It is definitely getting hot in here. I'm gonna complain to my wife. No, I really support and resistance is not the way that the market actually behaves. It's an illusion, guys. Support and resistance generally means that there's some sort of correlation between two assets that keep them roughly in line, and that's why they're holding that range, and there's nothing else really going on. Is usually what support and resistance means. When you get a move, though, if there's a real reason for the stock to move, does your support and resistance doesn't mean a thing. So like here's if we were going to prove is if you were going to prove support and resistance empirically, how would you do it? Right? Think about that. Okay? So here's what I think you would do is to prove support and resistance empirically, I would have to go in every time that there is first I would have to define what is support. Okay? So let's say support is an area where price has pivoted 3 or more times or 2 or more times, whatever, right? Okay. So we put the zigzag indicator on there, and if price has bounced off of a particular area more than once, then that's support and resistance, right? And so then what we should be able to do if support and resistance really is a thing is if we get back into that zone and we back into the support zone and we buy in the support zone, that we will have a better than random chance of price bouncing for us, right? And so I've back tested these setups and it's not the case. It's not the case at all. Every price level. Like so if you can't mathematically define what support and resistance is, then it's just hindsight bias, right? So the footprint, so the footprint only tells you what happened. It's useful information, but it has a limited ability to tell you the future on its own, right? So here again, people have all of these ideas. Somebody was saying this on my TikTok. They're like, "Well, I'm just looking at the footprint and I do these setups," and I'm like, "Well, okay, good for you," but I've back tested those too. People think, okay, if you have an imbalance at this location and then you take it. Well, so here again, I think that the problem usually comes down to people don't realize what it really takes to like really empirically test something. So if we were going to test a footprint setup, what's a footprint setup that we should test? Yeah. I would have to go and fix up my own footprint to test this correctly, and that would be a project that would be too big for today. That's not what I wanted. Chart. ZN volumetric base period value 30 minutes, fix per level 1, pick replay, bid ask, show profile. Okay. Okay, so here we have a footprint. And what they say, what these footprint people tend to say is like, number one, if we have an unfinished auction like this, that we're likely to go back and retest that zone. Okay. I very explicitly tested that one and it's just outright false. It's just not, it wasn't a very good setup at all. But then the other thing that they'll say is they'll look for an imbalance of some sort. They'll say like, okay, there's way more on the bid here, or maybe they'll do it diagonally, right? They'll say there's way more on the bid here than there is on the offer. And so that means that there's support and that we're going to bounce up, right? And again, like you can really use the hindsight bias. So here's the thing. At what point do we decide that that's the case, right? So do we look at it real time and as soon as there's an imbalance, I think you'd have to have a minimum size filter on it too. Let's say that at least 3,000 contracts have traded on the size that's higher and there's nothing on the other side. Or not nothing. There's like a 3-to-1 imbalance or something like that. And I think that the lower side, maybe the filter has to be on the lower side. Because otherwise, if there was an iceberg on this side, you would immediately get that imbalance and it will always trade it when there could be some on the other side if you just wait. So we could say this side has to trade at least 500 contracts. And over here, the difference between them is like 6-to-1 or something like that, right? Then as soon as that happens, we take the trade. Or is it that we have to wait until the end of the bar, right? Well, that's where kind of some of these problems come in because to properly backtest a strategy, you have to have some sort of quantization in it, right? You have to do it like on a certain time interval. So then maybe what we could do is we could put a time series on it that is like a 1-minute time series as the main one that we take trades off of. And then behind that, we have the volumetric bars that we're keeping all of the data in. And as at the end of a 1-minute bar, if we detect that situation, then we can take the trade, right? And I'm telling you, if you go and you do that, you go and you program that setup, what you're going to find is that it doesn't really have that much edge. Oh, and by the way, the other thing you got to worry about is if you're using tick replay, if your chart wasn't open at the time, some of that volume that it might be showing you might not be correct. Because what you're seeing here is entirely dependent on what price the order was executed at compared to what the best bid and ask was at the time. And your best bid ask historical feed does not match up with your trades feed perfectly. And especially when it's in very fast action, whether something was a buy or a sell is extremely unreliable in here. Hey, when you know, remember I said, well, I think that they probably is a situation where they could probably extend the range and then come back to 119 even, and they did, in fact, do exactly that. But so that means I still don't necessarily want to trade it unless we get back up to like right here. I wish I had taken it when it was there, huh? Well, so the thing though is that think of it this way. Why will that cause something to happen in the future? Okay. If Elon Musk says that he's going to sell 10% of his shares, okay, and maybe he's already started selling, so we know for sure he's selling, but he's only sold 1%. Then what do you know about the future, or what prediction are you going to make about the future? Price is probably going to go down because he's not done selling yet, right? So here we have a large player in the market that is buying or selling, and he has explicitly told us what his futures are orders are going to be, right? So here is a piece of information that tells us directly what future orders are going to be, right? Okay. Compare this to what most technical analysis actually is. Most technical analysis is I look at a chart, I think that I see this pattern. Let's see if this pattern seems to correlate to the stock moving in a certain direction in the future. And if it reaches a certain threshold, then maybe I will trade it, right? And the problem that you end up with when you do that is you're data snooping, right? So you're looking at what happens, you're looking at all of the past action and what seemed to work the best in the most recent past action. And that's not necessarily what ends up happening. It works well in the future, right? Because you have unless you can explain why it happens. I mean, you can use that to come across a real edge, but if you can't explain why it happens, how do you know that it's going to continue to work? How do you know that you're not just picking up on some random aberration right? And what usually ends up happening is that the number of samples that you have isn't actually enough to show the behavior that you think you have, right? Like, think about the square root law of meta order impact. Every data set that we've ever looked at that comes from, somebody executing a large meta order tends to follow this square root law. It's remarkably consistent, right? Everything else that we get is like, well, if you backtest it over, for order flow, it's like the most you can get is 2 years, right? So, well, we backtested over the last 2 years and it seems to have worked with 52% of the time or something, right? Okay. Makes you wonder the efficacy of Axia. Well, I haven't taken their courses, so I can't comment on any of the stuff that they teach there or any of the individual traders. I do know that they have a few traders there that are very successful. And I do know that some of these guys, like Brannigan, for instance, have had past success in the past. So, but again, what do I say? Follow experts, not gurus, right? So if we're gonna follow Axia because they've had success in the past, that's following a guru, right? If we're gonna follow a trading strategy, it should be based on empirical evidence that shows that it's not just random, right? Have they provided that? I don't know if they have. Maybe they do if you take your course. I don't know. I haven't taken the course. But that's what I'd be looking for, right? But what we can do is we can look at something that would directly cause people to place orders. For instance, we know how a hedge fund rebalances their portfolio every month. And so we can make an estimate of where their portfolio is at and what kind of rebalancing they'll have to do this month. And that would be something that could predict the future orders, right? Because we're predicting what move they're going to have to make at the end of the month to maintain their portfolio allocation, right? There's something that could predict future orders, right? If we had some way of determining where people's stops are, that's something that could predict future orders. Although from what I've seen in the markets so far, I don't think that there are levels that are really that predictive of where stops are going to come through per se. It seems to me that the large meta orders are the true dominant factor in the markets. Okay, so the footprint can be potentially useful because if we have something that says these are what the future orders are going to be, the footprint gives us a really good view of what those orders actually were. So we can then look at that and say, okay, was the actual volume in line with our prediction? Yes. But you can't necessarily come in and say, here's what the volume was, this is what it's going to be. You usually need an outside data source, something more predictive of volume in order to actually have an edge. That makes sense? So it's not like these tools are useless. It's just technical analysis is useless, right? That what's happening is these people are taking really solid tools and they're misapplying them by applying technical analysis to them. And I can say this because I initially did that with order flow in the DOM. Well, this has started to go quite a bit further than So I thought, hey, maybe they are going to move lower and they'll snap back, but now they're down to 27. So that was like 12 ticks or so. That was quite a bit further than I anticipated. Is trading corn easy? No. So just think of it this way, Axelrod. How am I going to predict future orders in that market? What are some things that are going to happen that could potentially help me predict future orders, right? Rainfall, weather forecasts, reports on how much has actually been planted, supply and demand stocks. Am I well suited to knowing and understanding and being in the know on those particular things for that market? I mean, if you want to specialize in corn, you can do it, right? I personally, I don't have that background. If I was a farmer, though, like if my whole life was my family grew corn for a living, then maybe I would be much more up on that sort of stuff, right? And maybe I could pull that edge then, right? So, why treasuries? Because treasuries is the place where I feel it is the easiest for a person starting from scratch to develop an edge of that nature, because the information on Federal Reserve policy is much more publicly available, and yet the market like gets it wrong all the time. So if you become an expert on Federal Reserve policy, um, and what moves the treasuries in general, after a few years, you can get a pretty good hang on things that will potentially predict future orders, right? I just heard the saying, if you can't trade corn, so I assumed it would be easy. Well, so the advantage, one of the advantages of corn is that it does tend to be a fairly trendy asset, which is to say that like uh, much like the treasuries, when a trend develops, they're really solid trends that don't have much pullback to them, right? That's the thing that's nice about the treasury, is that when you actually have a good trade, you don't really have to do anything. That, I mean, it hasn't been the case lately because these markets have been awfully volatile, but in normal action, you could just go short one of these and it would never come even 4 ticks back on you. Feels like the air is getting colder. I'm gonna go test it again. For me, trading food futures is an ethical thing. I don't want to speculate on food. Well, I think we need to nip that one in the butt. Why would it be unethical to trade food? What about energy trading? Okay, so energy trading, from what I know about energy trading, weather is a big factor there as well, right? Because if it's winter time, well, probably, but better example, if we're talking about just straight power, then probably there's more utilization for power in the summer. Whereas if you're talking about natural gas, it's in the winter, right? So the hotter we expect the summer to be, the more the price of power is going to go up, right? And we would have to keep, and we would have to be knowledgeable on, are there any power plants to be decommissioned? You know, like all of these things about the Texas power grid not being able to handle the capacity, or the California power grid not being able to handle the capacity. You'd have to have known about those things before they happened, right? Futures were built for the purpose of hedging, not gambling. Okay. Okay, people in Africa don't have enough corn, wheat, soybean, orange juice, whatever. I just feel about it to take advantage on rising food prices. Okay, but like you got to understand that you not trading it doesn't help them, right? So if there is not enough food in an area, does uh, a lot of people would say, okay, inflation is going up. Um, this food thing, There's the price of food is going up. Okay. If we come in and we put a price cap on food, does that help those people? No, it does not, because all you're doing is reducing the incentive for the producers to produce more food, right? Because if prices are going up, then producers can produce more food and make more money from it, right? And then eventually that comes back into equilibrium, right? If we don't have it on an exchange, then we just don't get a very accurate view of like what the actual supply and demand in that market is. And then people don't have the information they need to make the correct decisions to know, oh, well, I need to plant more wheat this season because there's a wheat shortage, right? You see, it's not trading is not immoral, guys. It's a very necessary and important part of our entire economic system. Guys, without us, without people here trading the thing, being an expert on what that thing should be worth, without us, the whole rest of the system doesn't work. It's all premised on that one thing. We already know like markets are not very efficient, right? But they're more efficient than any other alternative system that we have. Think about how much better off society would be if we could make the markets even more efficient, right? But if we were to just get rid of trading, that would be awful. So it's not immoral. If there is an asset, if corn is going up, there's a food shortage, okay? You buying corn and making money on it, it's not an immoral thing, and you shouldn't feel bad about it. It is actually your moral obligation to trade the market and get as much money out of it as you can, right? Because if you actually understand that thing, you need to grow your capital as much as possible so that you, the person that understands that market better, has a greater degree of control over that market so that that market will be more efficient, right? You see a lot of jobs near you about energy trading. That's interesting. Do you live in California? You know what's one that I find really interesting is water. I think that at some point water is probably going to become a big deal. Like this whole thing with all of the Colorado River reservoirs just running dry is I think it's a little scary. It's just kind of a warning of what's to come, folks. At some point there is going to be like a real I don't know how to describe it. Like a real war between California and the rest of the Rocky Mountain, Intermountain West. Oh, Texas. I guess I could see it in Texas too. Speculation on it increases the fluctuation? Not necessarily. The more liquidity that there is, the less fluctuation there will be. Do you want to push the prices even higher with trading on it? Yes, because if that's what the fair price actually is, the market should reflect the fair price. You're not helping people by artificially keeping the price low. You're not. What you're doing is by keeping the price low, what you're doing is you're punishing the very people that you need to do something in order to fix the problem. Because you're not going to fix the problem by not trading on it, right? How do you fix the problem if there's not enough corn out there? Grow more corn. How do you get that to happen? There has to be an incentive for people to grow more corn. Well, if the price doesn't go up, what incentive do they have to buy more corn? There is no incentive, and so they don't buy. This is why like price controls don't work. This is why The central planning that the communists and so forth tried to do, it never worked, and they always resulted in very, very poor production and stuff, is because there wasn't actual real incentives for people to grow the field, and then there'd be famine and stuff. You're not helping people by artificially keeping the price low. The thing that is the best for society is for the price to accurately reflect the fundamentals as accurately as possible. And the more that we can get the market in line with what the real fundamental price should be, the better off we all will be. Doesn't mean that there's not rent-seeking behaviors in society, but it's not in trading. Okay. Supply and demand. Yeah. See, I think that people have this idea in their mind that if I benefit from something and somebody else um, doesn't benefit from that thing or is harmed by that thing, then what I'm doing is immoral. You cannot look at the world like that. I'm telling you, that's not the way that the world works. Okay, and you're gonna be in for just feeling bad all of the time, or just completely getting run over all of the time if that's what your view of the world is going to be. It's a very self-limiting belief. Okay. Sometimes people's incentives or what they benefit and don't benefit from come into conflict. And this is a natural part of life. It is an unavoidable part of life. Okay. And taking the L does not necessarily benefit society. Okay. Especially if you're the one that actually understands it and knows what's going on, right? If you're the one that actually understands it and knows what's going on, it is your duty to take advantage of it as much as possible so that that force is factored into the market price correctly. That's what helps society. And if there are people out there that don't that are harmed from that, they need to get out of the way. It's not that an injustice is being done against them. It's not good or bad. That's just what is, right? Yeah, in general, speculation increases inequalities. Well, okay, but what we're doing is so it kind of you're using a definition of speculation that is overly broad or maybe overly specific, and then you're trying to apply it to places. Okay, so like if you're trading something that doesn't have underlying fundamental value and the only thing that you're buying or selling it for is on the premise that other people later will come in and buy it for more, like you're doing with Bitcoin, then you are speculating on an asset that provides no discernible benefit to society. I really think that at this point that trading and investing in Bitcoin at this point is an immoral activity. You are increasing energy usage in the planet for a technology that doesn't really work and is inefficient. There is better technology for us to do decentralized transactions than Bitcoin, right? So you are putting capital into something that has no fundamental value. Okay. But when you have something that does have fundamental value, investing on it is a good thing for everybody in the long run, guys. And you've got to take a bigger view of it, right? Because the reason that we have the society that we do today is because men like us for hundreds of years understood this and traded on it and built up that capital and that investment, and that in turn developed the society and allowed us to basically take, it used to be like seriously, even in America, like 200 years ago, what people were living on is just absolute poverty by today's standards, right? We have increased the standard of living across the world in a way that has never been done in history before. And how did it happen? By a free market, investing in a free market, right? And then people come in and they say it's immoral. No, it's not. It's the most moral thing that you can do. Isn't that, I mean, I think that people seem to think that being moral is always putting other people ahead of yourself. That's not the case. That's not the case, guys. Is it moral to put your neighbor ahead of yourself if it means that your family starves? That's not your problem. The way that it should work is you need to do the thing that's best for you. If everybody does the thing that's best for them, then in general, we will have a society that will build and grow. Now, sometimes there are situations where people do what's good for them, and it ends up causing so much harm to other parts of society that it's a problem. And in those cases, that's where we should have regulation. Okay. And then it should be contingent upon you to understand those problems and to advocate for better legislation. And if you're the person that understands it, then you should be the person telling people what the correct legislation should be, right? Like, for instance, with us right now, mark-to-market accounting rules are harmful to the market because it allows people to take on risk that they shouldn't have, and it can create feedback loops that basically ensure a blow up of their account. And so the mark-to-market rules should be changed to factor in market impact. That's a regulation that we know should happen and we should be advocating for, right? For example, the rising house prices is also speculation, and yes, maybe it reflects even the fair market price at this moment. That doesn't mean it will not lead to inequalities, don't you agree? I think that if you want people to build more houses, that you got to make houses to be more valuable so that there's incentives to build houses. In this particular instance, what's the immoral thing that's being done? The immoral thing that's being done is people are putting up barriers to other people building houses so that their housing prices stay artificially high. Right? I'm not being libertarian here, but we are talking about just the basics of the market, because the bigger problem here is that what I'm hearing is a self-limiting belief, right? It's a belief about the world that one is not accurate, but two is going to harm your own progress in life, right? It's going to prevent you from taking advantage of the best trading opportunities and really being as successful as you can. Because there's this some idea that if I am making money and somebody else isn't making money, that it's immoral, right? When we trade here in futures, it's a zero-sum game. Every dollar that's made here is lost by somebody else, and the exchange just puts the money into a pool and then divvies it back out to the people, right? So if I make money here, somebody else is losing money. Does that make it immoral for me to trade futures? No. They have reasons to be taking the trade that they do, and there needs to be a market here so that people can hedge their risks and stuff. So as long as what I'm doing helps the market become more efficient, it's a good thing. Speculation increases inequality. So explain this to me. Why is an inequality in and of itself immoral? So there's another problem that you got there. Okay. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that inequality is a good thing. Okay. But it's always going to exist to some extent, right? Yeah. Why is it that inequalities are immoral? Right? Like think about it. If um equality is not really what matters. Listen, yeah. Interesting debate, but the market is moving. I know. Like I really should be short the treasuries here, but I'm having a hard time jumping on again. And I don't feel very on. I'm super hot in here and I'm not I don't think that my read here is the best. You know, I wanted the pocket to be at 119 and I was dead wrong about that. So why should I try and go long here on the premise that it's going to go to 3? We missed it. We missed it back when it was at 9.5. Essentially, is when I should have taken it. So I'm kind of in the I missed the train, maybe better to not touch it kind of mode right now. Hello, Nasdaq. Oh, you're a little bit late today, but we're glad to see you. As US trader, no, I don't know about that one, Lucas. You're gonna remember that the volatility works both ways, right? You can see that I'm getting heated up. Like it's hot in here. It's got to be like 75, 76 degrees in here now. So yeah, I don't feel very comfortable right now. Anyways, back to the question. Why is inequality wrong or immoral? So I don't think that it is. I think that the thing that matters is the minimum standard of living, right? What really matters is like, okay, if some people are living in absolute riches and everybody else is living in the mud, then yeah, that would be a bad thing. Okay. But if letting a few people live extravagant riches allows the standard of living of everybody to rise, then it's a good thing, right? And that's what's happened with capitalism, generally speaking. Yes, there are people that have exorbitant wealth, and that's always been the case even before capitalism, right? But the standard of living has increased, and the standard of living for even the poorest people in America is so much higher than what it was 150, even 50 years ago, right? Like, you guys have any idea how, like, just if you have a smartphone, and who doesn't have a smartphone these days, right? Just the fact that you own a smartphone makes you richer than all of your ancestors. The power that you have in your hands just with a smartphone, that you can pull this thing out, learn anything that you want to know, endless entertainment, right? Okay. If you have a roof over your head. Now there are problems, okay? Because in generally speaking, from what I see right now, and the biggest problem that I see in our society right now is that people do not seem to be making enough to be able to feel like they can save it. We're basically squeezing everything that we can out of people that they're making, and preventing them from saving, so that when they're when they retire, when they can no longer work, they don't have enough capital to live, and that's a real problem. That's a real problem that we need to fix. Okay. But just like on the standard of living front, if everybody has a roof over their head, they have food, and they have a smartphone, you are doing pretty damn well compared to the rest of history. Okay. All of your ancestors would kill to be in that situation. Okay. So is the standard of living in our society today, in our capitalist society today, awful? It's not. It's just that people want to have Lambos and stuff. They're jealous. Okay. But the degree of inequality in the society is not a measure of how moral things are. It's not. I'm not saying that it's an irrelevant metric, because we know that when inequalities get to a certain level, that you start to have real problems, right? And especially if the standard of living is below a certain point. But you know what? You're unlikely to see like a French Revolution style uprising in the United States today. Not saying you can have a civil war or some sort of a revolution at some point, but wouldn't be like the French Revolution, because the standard of living for Americans is just too high. You're not going to convince people to go out into the street and start protesting if they all have roofs over their heads, are eating, and have smartphones. It's not going to happen, right? So inequality is a poor metric to measure our performance, right? Any idea of this pullback volume? Well, what I see right now is that the 118.29 has a really big amount of trade at it and is acting as the whole at the moment. So I don't think that we'll get back up to 119.20, but we might get back up to 119 even, and it could give us another opportunity to get in. It's wrong to equate standard of living equals material acquisitions. Would be better to understand how much material acquisitions weight within that measure. So can you give an example? The more that Elon Musk has, the more it pushes us all down. That's not true. That's not true. The actions of Elon Musk have created money and wealth that would not have existed otherwise. You can grow the pie, guys. The best example, in my opinion, is Jeff Bezos. I'm not saying that everything about the man is good, but I do envy him in one thing, which is that he set out to create wealth, and he did in Amazon, and he created a company that has provided so much opportunity for people. It's insane. Like, probably nobody in the history of mankind has created more opportunity for other people than Jeff Bezos with Amazon, because anybody can go and sell their stuff on Amazon now. It's crazy. Okay, how much of importance is having an iPhone while not having health? Okay, so I think that if you're going to bring healthcare into the equation, you've got to remember that healthcare, like our level of healthcare that we have now, is like a really new thing in society, right? So of course it's going to be expensive. I don't think that you can come in and say, well, because I can't get any healthcare procedure that I want for free, that my standard of living is poor. Because relatively speaking, compared to your ancestors, the fact that the hospital even exists is still a huge step up, right? Now, you can argue about whether a single payer system would be more beneficial, but I personally don't think that it would work very well in America. We're actually competing with them, but that's not the way that it works in Nasdaq. I mean, we are competing with each other to some extent, yes, but the economy is not a zero-sum game like futures is, right? Why? Because the things that you do in the economy actually build other things, right? This is why this whole thing about is the thing that you're trading, does it actually have real value? Is in that discussion with Bitcoin, This is why this is really so important. Okay. Land, you can plant stuff on land. Land will generate new stuff, it will generate new capital, right? Companies can generate new capital. Their earnings grow, they become bigger, and then they provide jobs to other people, and that generates value. Like, you're growing the pie, right? And here's the thing, is that in a competitive environment, right? Sometimes you are going to come into conflict with the wants and desires of somebody else, right? Okay, that does happen. It's not necessarily in this case, okay, but there can be a situation, okay, where you want to go and buy a store, you want to start a business, so you need land to start that business, and somebody else, they want to do the same thing, and they want to do it in the same spot. So does that mean that you should just give up and let them have it? Is that the moral thing to do? No, because it's not bad that your wants and desires conflict with somebody else's, right? And yes, sometimes the things that are good for you might not be good for other people. But that's where we come back to this whole thing that is like, yes, but in creating an efficient market, in the end, that balances out. And if it doesn't, then there should be regulation. Well, I maybe could have bought 2.98, but it is so hot in here. It's only like 75 degrees, but I'm just like, so I feel like I'm sweating like a pig. But yet it's not perceived that way. You can't change that perception by how big of a role that perception of bad standards of living play into people's realities. Well, but here's the thing: is that um, the standard of living in the U.S. is so high that it's actually causing us problems. Like, we have so much free time to just sit and think with ourselves that we're developing all of these disorders, like anxiety disorders and things like that, because your brain is designed to survive. And if you're surviving, it doesn't turn the brain off, right? The brain keeps practicing to keep you alive. And if you're not exercising and have hobbies and are doing things to keep yourself occupied, you're just sitting there, you're watching TV and you're thinking, you're going to develop these problems for sure. Right? And why is that? It's because we don't actually have to struggle. And these people that are working multiple jobs and everything, they're happier than a lot of these other people. Wow, they gave me 2985 was when I was talking that I didn't like it, but look, it came back down there really quickly. It does seem like there is some selling pressure here today. Cost of living in Canada is insane expensive versus the USA, right? But guys, again, first of all, your standard of living is higher than almost all of your ancestors, unless like one of your ancestors was like royalty and now you're just a regular American. Unless it's that, your standard of living is higher than that of your ancestors. Okay, that's the first thing. The second thing is, if we want the cost of living to be cheaper, if we want to improve people's standards of living, how do we do it? Okay. And I'm telling you, like, price controls doesn't do it. Okay. Because you are removing the incentive for the people that need to do something in order for us to improve the standard of living to do that thing. Man, the way that I said that was just like really convoluted, wasn't it? Right? If we want the cost of living to be cheaper, people need to build more houses. Why are people going to build more houses if the government steps in and says, well, you can only sell a house for this much now? I tell you what's going to happen. Anybody that's going to go build a house is going to say, well, I'm not getting involved in that business. The government's going to go and do that kind of crap. No, guys, it doesn't help. Yeah, the price has to be high in order to incentivize people to build more. So we still got an hour left. I'm kind of wondering here what their treasuries are going to do in the next hour. Because one of the things is that this move down has not really been like the way that it usually does, right? Usually we will have waves that are spaced 45 minutes apart. But here in the treasury, it's just kind of been like a slow grind down. Blockchain technology can be generating value. Well, I don't think that Bitcoin does. Okay, but do you have 1 meal per day? Like here's the thing is again, what's the metric that we should define our success by, right? And the whole point of that was just to say that the inequality is not the metric, right? That the metric is like, what is the overall standard of living? Now, analyzing what the overall standard of living is like a really difficult thing to do, right? Because some people are going to have a really high standard of living and some people are going to have a very low standard of living. So you can't just like use an average or something like that. But what we could do is we could go and we could say, here is a certain standard. Okay. You have 3 square meals a day and a roof over your head. Okay. What percentage of people fall below that? Right. And the answer is that in American society, it's the lowest number of people in like all of history. It's not perfect. It's not everybody, but it's never going to be everybody, unfortunately, because some people just have problems. But you know, the higher we can get that number, the better. Right. And compared to the rest of history, we're doing pretty damn good. And how did we get there? Free market economy. Right. So the larger point here is this whole idea that like, if I come in and I choose not to trade something, or I choose not to make money on corn rising, damn it, Seth, I had to trade today. Well, if you're not in a trade right now, I don't think you should take one, Lucas. I don't think I should take one. Think of let's go to that one. I think I answered that right, because the whole point of that was I was saying this idea that I shouldn't trade something because it would be like immoral or I would feel bad about it. I think is a self-limiting belief and comes from a misunderstanding of what actually is beneficial to society. Okay. Should we have taken a trade off of this? But you feel you're missing trades? Well, I think that we could have justified taking a trade at some point, maybe around like after they busted to 119 and came back to 04. That probably would have been the best place for us to have taken a trade, right? What is driving the order flow today? Well, we had that retail sales number, right? And the market overall seems to be risk on, although the S&P 500 really hasn't gone anywhere since it opened, has it? Right? And I would say that the order flow in the 10-year is a little weird. So I'm not so sure that I really missed out on that much by not trading it. Though certainly I probably would have shorted and I would have made at least 10 bucks. But the real question is was there something that we knew that was predictive? I don't know if we did. Hmm, I don't know. I don't know if the retail sales number is is the move that we're seeing right now, is that like a fair assessment of what the retail sales number said? I'm not sure. Has stocks been going down like crypto? Oh yeah. No, the reason the cryptocurrency market, as far as I can tell, has been extremely highly correlated with the Nasdaq. So as the Nasdaq went down, um, the cryptocurrency world went down too. The only reason that you're really hearing about the cryptocurrency world so much right now is one, just because the media knows that they're going to get a lot of interest from it, and two, because of the tether or the Terra implosion, right? Without the Terra implosion, I don't know if people would be as bearish on crypto as they have been. But this is not, I mean, I do love debates, but this isn't a debate, right? This the what I mean, okay, it is a debate, but the purpose of this discussion is not to debate a topic so that we can enlarge in our understanding of a topic, right? The purpose of this debate is to understand certain beliefs that may be harming our performance in trading, right? And beliefs around money. I like there's a lot, especially if you come from, a poor family. Who can I say it like that kind of sounds like really like uh dismissive, and like I'm putting people to, oh, you came from a poor family. Well, if you came from a poor family, but one of the beliefs that a lot of people from poor families tend to develop is that anybody that is rich and successful, they are only able to do it at the expense of other people, and therefore, becoming rich and successful yourself would be a bad thing to do. It would be an immoral thing to do. That is a belief that even if you come in and you say, "Well, I still want to trade, and I'm going to trade in certain situations and stuff like that," um, it's like it's your subconscious like undermines yourself. Like a lot of your behavior just has to do with your underlying beliefs, and so if you want to change your behavior, um, typically it's going to have to start with whatever that limiting belief that you have is, right? So can I give you another example here that's actually like really truly controversial? Okay. A lot of people believe that they are predisposed to certain behaviors, sexual orientations, whatever the deal is, either because of their genetics or whatever the deal is. But essentially, they're saying, I am that way just because I'm that way, right? And as such, it's pointless to try and fight who I really am, quote unquote. Okay. This is now, maybe it's true. Like here's the thing. Here's the thing. Maybe it's true. Maybe you are predisposed to have a certain sexual orientation or to be interested in certain subjects. I mean, we don't really understand that stuff. Like the truth is, we don't have the science to understand why people like the things that they like, and to understand why people behave the way that they behave, or that they have the personality traits that they do. We seem to believe that personality traits, like conscientiousness and openness and all these things, do appear to be genetic, but we don't 100% understand how we get them, right? We're getting pretty far around today. Yeah. Okay. So maybe it's true. Okay. But you know what? it is to your advantage to believe that that's not true. Even if it is true, ignore the reality and believe that you are 100% in control of who you are and what you do, right? Because if you believe that, then you will act in accordance with that belief, even unconsciously, right? If you really truly believe it, right? Terra, Terra. Okay, so, dude, if you're not, so first of all, if you're not, I'm not trying to slam you or anything like that, but trading involves understanding what's going on in the market and being able to find pieces of information that can be predictive to trade off of. And so Terra is probably one of the things that you should have known about. And if you didn't know about Terra, then you should really reconsider whether trading cryptocurrencies is for you. Okay. But Terra was a stable coin. So there are stable coins out there like Tether, where they say, you give us $1 and then we'll give you a Tether. And supposedly, all of the tethers out there are backed by dollars. But the reality is that they're not. They've basically started to behave like a bank, and they've loaned money out to people and given them tethers that weren't backed by dollars, but were, they put up collateral for a loan or whatever the deal was. Okay. Terra was a stable coin, but it didn't have dollars behind it. They just said, okay, when somebody buys the Terra, then we're going to turn around and we're going to burn Luna or whatever the deal is. And so it's this algorithmic arbitrage thing where there's two assets. And when you trade this asset, then this asset does this thing and this asset does this thing, and it will counteract that move. And so the thing should stay pegged. But because there's no actual real underlying value in it, it's kind of like inevitable that it will blow up. And so what happened in Terra's case was that eventually there was enough pressure put on the cryptocurrencies, and somebody came in and raided Terra. And basically they came in, they went short Terra, and they just sold it. And so it went from, it lost 95% of its value. So there was all these people that had their cryptocurrency in that currency trying to weather the downturn. And then all of a sudden they lost 95% of their investment. So that was a real collapse in the Bitcoin ecosystem. And, that's kind of gotten everybody in the media is all talking about it and stuff. There you go. When it comes to reshaping your reality, attitude is more important than facts. Right. It seems to me that you can consciously make decisions to say, this is the thing that's best for me, even though it contradicts the available empirical evidence. Like, human brains are actually really good at that. Like, your whole brain is basically wired to be able to compartmentalize things and go along with the group for the sake of the survival of the group. So you can convince yourself of anything. Then this is how conspiracy theories are born. This is why conspiracy theories are so prevalent. Like, people, there's this conspiracy theory that conspiracy theories are all started by the CIA. It's not. It's people's natural tendency, and the way that the internet works. Because it's really an interesting thing. Like, the reality is that the human brain is just did not evolve for the internet, right? Because our brain basically evolved for tribalism. So you get all of these groups online that are tribalistic, right? And then they're posting information, and then the other side of it is that the human brain did not evolve to filter out massive amounts of information for the veracity of their claims, right? So people aren't very good at being bombarded all day with all of this information and knowing what's actually true and what's not. It takes you have to be, ADHD or autistic or whatever to be the type like me that comes in and every little thing that they hear, they go, oh, but wait a second, that doesn't match up. What kind of empirical evidence do we have to verify that claim is true? Right? A normal person doesn't come in and say, okay, we're going to trade. Let's look at a trading system and backtest it over 10,000 samples to see the efficacy of that thing and verify that works. This is not the way that human brain works. The way that the human brain works is, okay, let me look at who appears to be the most successful person at this, and I will try and copy them. So then you get this guy that's pretending that he's been successful, right? And you copy him, and you say, oh, well, like it worked over these 10 trades, so it must work. And then you start trading it. You run into a bear market, it stops working, and you say, well, I must just suck at this, and you give up. That's what a normal person does. And it's because of the way that our brains are designed. It is getting hot in here. Our AC is definitely busted. Is it normal for your AC unit to go out within 5 years? I don't know. It's probably a minor fix. Probably a minor fix. The chimp paradox, chimp management. I've never heard of that before. Maybe I'll have to look it up. Anyways, I don't know how engaged you guys were with that conversation, but it's an important conversation to have. So I'm glad that we had an opportunity to bring it up. Well, I'm still of the opinion that the movement below 119 was a little bit unusual. We're back to 119. So I could come in here and put an order out at 2.97 and see if I get filled, right? But I'm still a little bit nervous about doing that. Did you check the AC float? I don't know what that means. So let me explain what happened again. Last night, the AC turned on and it was making a loud noise. Like it was outside, but I could hear it inside and it was like vibrating and I could hear the sound coming through all of the vents. It was like this loud vibrating sound. So I went downstairs and turned the AC off. There's a switch, turned it off, and then turned it back on. And the AC came back on like normal and air was coming out. So I forgot about it. But now this morning, I'm looking and I'm feeling the air. Air is coming out of it, but the air is not very cold. The air feels like the temperature that the basement is. So I don't think that the AC unit is working. I bet the cap. What do you mean by the cap went out? What does that mean? It might be low on charge. That could be. Is there regular maintenance that I'm supposed to be doing myself on the air conditioner that I'm not aware of and I should feel stupid about? Because it seems like there's a lot of things like that for houses. Okay, the fan was spinning, yes. That was kind of the thing that I found frustrating when I went out to look at it. I was like, I can't tell that anything's obviously wrong. Octavia Z says yes. Okay. Well, now I'm going to have to bring the technician out, probably. And no, my Ninja has not been buggy this morning. But you know what? I haven't been like trying to actively trade here. Well, I'm glad that I didn't take the trade at 2.97 so far. I mean, this could turn back around, but it kind of seems like something changed. Like I'm a little concerned that it's slicing through all of this volume up to 0.4 so easily. There is an iceberg at 0.1/2 though. But I don't know. I don't think I have it. Well, okay, I think I do. I think that there is somebody is generally buying the treasuries. They were definitely buying them yesterday. They've really been buying them over the last week, and I think that they may still be out there. So there is kind of this chance of a buyer coming up and like unwinding that down move to some extent, but they could stop at any time and then the selling can continue perhaps. So at the moment, I feel like I'm stuck between two order flows and I don't want to take the risk. But on top of that, it's hot and I'm a little tired. I didn't go to you know what happened? You know what actually happened, guys? Can I be honest with you? Well, I'm a little embarrassed to say this. I know this sounds silly, but like I'm embarrassed to admit this that like last night I didn't go to sleep until 11. Normally I go to sleep at 9, but I didn't go to sleep until 11 because I was producing music. I'll get in and I'll start producing the music and I just completely lose track of time sometimes. But I was making a pretty dope remix of Above and Beyond Satellite. I was pretty into it. If it was a loud explosion and it's not cooling, probably the condenser pump's capacitor bust. If it's low on charge, you see ice on the large copper line. Okay, so explain this. So when I go out there, there's like this big black thing with a fan on the top of it, right? And then I can see like if I look beyond the fan, I can see like one metal pipe in it, and that's like all I can see in the unit. So I didn't even know like when I went out there, I'm like, so do I kick it? Okay, so if we want to go short, or sorry, if we want to go long rates right here, I think 2.97 right there is probably the spot. Like they're giving you one lot, you could take it and probably catch the edge there, right? Okay, so well somebody sold it. I'm not going to take it, but that's kind of the sort of spot that I like to look for. Is I always want if I'm going to hit in with a market order, I want the spread to be as little as possible, and I would prefer to catch the edge as I do it. That like there's one lot in there and I hit into it. Pretty cool that I make. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, you gotta have hobbies, guys. I think that some of my kids need more or better hobbies. Like playing video games is not enough of a hobby, I don't think. I think that you need to have more than just a game because you need to have it needs to be it needs to be something that you can like how do I put this? It needs to be something that you can quietly occupy yourself with that isn't dumping loads of dopamine into your brain all the time, right? So maybe what I should say is we need to have non dopamine generating hobbies, right? So I think that things where you are creating content is probably what you need. Maybe I should say that you need to have a creator hobby. Maybe I should just tell all of my children you need to have a creator hobby because at some point it's going to be a critical skill for you to make content. Didn't even sleep or shave. Good grief, dude. No, I just got 6 hours of sleep instead of 8. That's all. Oh, it's getting so hot in here. What made you get into okay. Here's the story. Once upon a time, I was 18, I think. No, I was 17. I was 17. I was like a senior in high school. And one of the things that I'm in Utah, so we're Mormons, right? So you go on a mission when you're a Mormon, but before you go on a mission, you have to have your wisdom teeth out. So like you can't have any kind of like surgery that could possibly happen like that. Or I don't know if it's like a requirement to go on, but basically I was told I had to do this before I go on my mission. So we decide to do it over the Christmas holiday. So like after Christmas, but before New Year's, right? And that Christmas, my parents bought me a CD that was called Ultra Trance 01. Ultra is like the largest US based dance music label. Okay. And they have a big party over in Miami called Ultra, right? So you've ever seen that's why Miami is like the big spring break, right? As they always have Ultra over spring break in Miami. Okay. So it was their first trance CD. Ultra has been traditionally been house, but trance was getting popular, so they made a couple of CDs for trance. And I listened to it like the first CD, and the first CD kind of had more like pop stuff on it. And I listened. The first song was like a remix of "I Just Died in Your Arms Tonight," you know. And I was like, oh, this is okay. And then the song that came after, I was like, this is dumb. Okay, whatever. Okay, so I completely forget about it. And then I go and get my wisdom teeth taken out, right? And after you have your wisdom teeth taken out, you're always loopy, right? You get loopy, man. Tell everybody that you love them and yada, 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 yada. I come home, I throw up a bunch of blood, and I just feel like the most awful I've ever felt. And so I decide to lay down on the couch and try to fall asleep so that I don't feel so gross. And so to distract myself, I put in the CD. So back then it was a Walkman. You know, you had a Walkman with the anti-skip on it. I had pretty good anti-skip. Yeah. And so I put on the second CD and, you know, basically zoned out. And the first track on that CD was Punk by Barry Corsten. Oh my gosh. There's no other song has that, like that attitude, that feel like Punk does. I love that. That is the one, still to this day, one of my favorite songs. So Punk was a good song, and then I just zoned out. So the reality is I was high because I just had my wisdom teeth taken out and I listened to the music. And I'm telling you, this music does stuff to you. It does, like it does stuff to your brain in general. And then if you're on drugs, it's like you're hooked. Okay. So I generally liked it. Then a little bit later, we started getting into streaming. So can you believe that I was doing stuff with streaming in 2003? Like what? YouTube didn't even exist back then. But it was Winamp. Winamp had like Winamp TV, and they were testing this new technology for Winamp TV, and they were shoutcasting Unreal Tournament 2003 matches. So, and I was in one of the teams that was playing. So I watched that. And then after the match, this guy would get on and he would just do like a music mix of some sort, right? And I didn't know any of the songs, but I just thought that he was using a really cool piece of software. It's like, dude, that's like a really hyper advanced Winamp. That's so cool. So I asked him what it was, and it was Virtual DJ. So I downloaded that, and I'm like, I have no clue what's going on. So I start reading the manual, and like once I realized what it actually was doing, I was like, oh, this is actually, I'm changing the speed of the songs so that they play together. And it took me a while to figure out like what you were even supposed to do. But once I got two songs playing over top of each other and, you know, EQing them so that they sounded good together and basically you have a mix together, I was like, this is so dope. this is so dope. And I very quickly realized, oh, well, it doesn't work with rock music because they don't have a consistent beat and the beats are too varied. But all of the stuff from my trance CD works because it's all the same BPM. So I went out onto Napster. I mean, this was back when Napster was still a thing, dude. Or maybe it was Kazaa. No, it was on Napster. And I downloaded, I basically would look up every artist on that CD and I downloaded as many tracks as I could from them. And that was my library that I started to mix with. And that's how I got into electronic dance music. And then, I just kind of kept going into the software. So I started making the music. I wasn't that good. And then sometime later, I had discovered that there was it hadn't, like, this is how ridiculous it was for me. It was like, I didn't even realize that like trance music was basically rave music and that people were having parties every weekend with it. Right. So then I started going to parties and, like I can be a DJ. And, I DJ'd until I had basically played the big events locally. And I didn't really have an interest in like making it a career and like touring with it. So I didn't take it that far, but I tell you what, it's some sort of ADHD thing. Like listening to music helps you, man. I'm better. One of the things that happened to me was during the pandemic, I wasn't driving to work every day because I would get in a good hour or so of listening every day just from being in the car. And then all of a sudden I wasn't doing that. And so eventually I went out and I got like a better stereo for the garage and a better stereo for the TV so that I could listen there. And that's a lot better now. It gives you energy, man. And like the music, it definitely does stuff to you. What about content creators that play video games? Some aren't even good and just talk over gameplay. No, I think that you need to be doing a hobby where you're explicitly like just recording yourself as you're playing video games. It's not the same thing. Now, if you took your footage and then after the fact you went and you edited it in a video editor and made an artistic montage of that, then that would count, right? But I guess the thing is that you kind of want the hobby to be something that, or at least one of your hobbies to be something that generates the serotonin in you. Okay, so video games tend to drive dopamine more, right? You get these adrenaline fueled games, or they do these things so that like when you get the the drop or whatever, it makes a cool sound, and then you get new gear and that rewards you and you keep going. Like that's how Farmville worked, right? Those are all driven by dopamine. Watching TikTok, it's driven by dopamine because dopamine is also triggered by novelty. So TikTok, you got something where there's memes and stuff, so there's some consistency to it, but then there will be just enough of a variation in it that it's like, oh, that's cool and different, and then you get the rush of dopamine. Right? So there are problems when your brain is constantly being bathed in dopamine. Okay. And it's a real problem for kids. This is why a lot of kids aren't as motivated as they used to be and stuff. It's particularly a problem if you become addicted to porn, right? Because that is like supersized like dopamine into your brain, right? It changes the structure of your brain and it makes you less ambitious overall. So for trading, it's a bad thing. And it will really distort your perceptions of things. Okay. So for you to be successful in trading, I think that you need to have, to some extent, some periods where you give your brain a chance to rest and not be in dopamine all the time mode. Okay. So that's where it's like, women will do like sewing, right? These are the kinds of hobbies that you want. Working on cars. I don't know. There's all sorts of hobbies that guys have, right? But you want to have a hobby like that. And I would say preferably one where you're creating stuff. So music or video editing, these are really good ones. I don't know. Do you know about gloving? Oh yeah, totally. I mean, I don't know how to do it. They taught me how to do the figure eight with your hands, right? I've seen some crazy stuff. My little sister would do that. She came into the music on her own without me, which was kind of weird. But then we would go to raves together until she committed suicide in 2020. In 2 years. Is it? Am I the only one that feels weird that it's like it's halfway through 2022 now? Because I still feel like it's 2020. Feel like I lost 2 years. You say risk off again? Yeah. Are the treasuries heading up here because the S&P 500 has dipped below 4050 and is going risk off again? I don't see any clear inflection in here. I have to say this has kind of been interesting day because like we had a lot of news in the AM and it kind of didn't seem to react to any of it. And then we had like a pretty strong downturn in the treasuries that is now completely reversed. Right? We're not back to the pre-news price, but we've basically wiped out all of that extension of it. Education Secretary suggests student loan payments will restart. Doesn't feel like 2 years, yeah. When we overtrade, we wouldn't know time passing. Yeah, well, I am kind of thinking here that if now I don't know if I don't know if Lucas ended up taking any trades, but I'm looking at this action after the fact and I'm pretty happy that I didn't take a trade. Like remember when we came back here to 119 even and I said, well, if that was really the price that you wanted, now would be the place to try and take the trade now, right? But I said, number one, I don't feel very good. And number two, I don't feel very comfortable about the trade. Aren't we glad that we didn't take it? So one of the things that I'm starting to come to the conclusion of, we've talked about how important trade selection is. If to really have an edge, we need to have data that has a high probability of predicting the future. The number of opportunities that we're going to have where we really have something that can effectively predict the future is few and far between. And so it really behooves us to be careful about our trade selection. And I think that what has always happened to me, or the thing I'm realizing now is like, well, I still want to make money every day. I still want to trade every day. The number of opportunities that we actually have as a retail trader to really have an edge, I think are really slim. Right. I think yesterday I was kind of on the edge. Like I took it long because I saw some confirming order flow, but I was kind of looking for it to go long because I had seen that there are people buying the treasuries here around 3%. So, you know, that one, maybe that one was lucky, but here today, yeah, we had some news and everything. I could have traded the retail sells, but then after that, what did I know that would have told me that the treasuries were going to do this? And I really can't explain it. And I certainly couldn't have predicted it. Bitcoin failing 30,000 at the moment, by the way. So in this case, I think that staying out and choosing not to trade was the right decision. Probably a lot of that is because it's hot and I didn't sleep. So maybe if I'd been on the ball with everything, would I have taken a trade? I still hope that I wouldn't have. When we overtrade, we wouldn't know time passing. I think it's just because probably we all had things that we were doing there at the start of 2020 that had to get put on hold. Something that's happening in our family. I don't know what you do about this sort of thing, but like, you know, I was interested to see how my eldest would um turn out going into junior high, where, kind of like you're building completely different friends and stuff like that. It's like it's a different phase in your life, right? Things change a lot. So, okay, we'll see where that goes. And then, oh, you can't do that because you're schooling from home, right? So then what happens is 2 years goes by and he gets dropped into junior high 2 years later. And now all of a sudden the changes are so drastic and some of them not positive at all. And it because it's such a quick change, it's like, what do you do? Is there anything that you can do? Oh, it's throwing me for a loop, dude. I don't want to get into specifics because that's personal stuff. But the point was is that like after COVID, some of the changes in our lives are happening so quickly. It's hard for us to even fathom where they're coming from. Okay, now the 5 year just kind of turned down there. They all did. What's with that? Was that because the S&P 500 pivoted there? COVID-19 alert level in New York City is now high, quote unquote. What? Uh-oh, Jeff Bezos is tweeting again. What did he say? If you're looking for some scary bedtime reading, read Lights Out, The Pride, Delusion, and Fall of General Electric. Okay. Well, if Jeffrey Bezos is reading it, maybe we should read it. Jeffrey, you should come over. We can have a book club about it. You know what I should do is I should become the billionaire whisperer, right? Because look, I'm pretty happy, and um, I would like to save more. But I've taken like my house and everything like way further than I thought I would. So like I'm basically in the mode of, okay, Seth, you need to save as much money as you possibly can and get it as big as you possibly can so that you can just give it all to your kids. And I'm not in on this whole like, oh, I'm going to spend it all in retirement and going to party. No, I'm going to continue to be a miserly, frugal Scrooge for the rest of my life so that my children will have as much as possible, because then they could maybe have the opportunity to have billionaire children, right? But anyways, I think that kind of puts me in a great position to be like your regular average guy, um, that can still can hang out with billionaires and still be your regular average guy. Maybe, maybe. I wonder if his yacht made it through the Amsterdam Bridge. I see what you're saying now. That's funny. You know what I was reading about the other day? Okay, well, who was it? D was messaging me about this. I can't even remember his name now. Now I'm gonna have to go back and look it up. But he was a famous bond trader in the 90s. What's the difference in volume, by the way, Fed speaks and meeting minutes? The meeting minutes is not nearly as big of a deal as the actual Federal Reserve um, Fed funds rate announced in the press conference. But Thomas Baldwin, that's right, Thomas Baldwin the third, and he owns this place up in Michigan, I think it is called Garat Aloma or something like that, and he apparently they want to build a spaceport over there. Apparently they wanted to build a spaceport over there, and this guy is like, oh no, actually I think that's a pretty good idea. I might go along with that. and this guy is kind of weird. Like, I mean, I don't know him personally. It seems like I would hope that if I met him that we would get along because could learn a lot from him. I would hope, but he has a reputation for not playing along with others and just kind of doing his own thing. So like, they don't know what he's going to do. Man, the treasuries really came down there. That was a good opportunity at 2.95. I don't know how much further it's going to go, but like just the $10, that's not bad. Maybe we could get 20 out of it. Yeah, well, so NASDAQ killer, I'm maybe I need to go into more detail. Sometimes I think that I oversimplify things. Like I say things and I'm really not actually giving you guys enough context for you to understand, because I just assume all this context. I'm not very good at understanding what other people don't know. Like to me, like one of the things I was thinking about in the shower this morning was like compounding growth, right? Because the whole thing is you do, all those equations where it's P times E to the RT. You remember those in math? I definitely learned those in math. I know that not everybody gets that far in math, but not everybody realizes that like those are the equations that you use to figure out how much money you need to save for retirement and things like that, right? So like context matters. Anyways, so here's what happens, okay? First, there is a blackout period. So there's a period of about 2 weeks before a Federal Reserve meeting where the Fed speakers are not allowed to publicly comment on monetary policy. They don't do speeches or anything like that, okay? 2-week blackout period. Then there is a meeting, and it is a two-day meeting. So on Tuesday and Wednesday morning, they have this meeting where they determine what their policy is going to be. And the two key things that they decide in this meeting is one, what the federal funds rate is going to be, and two, what they're going to put out in their Federal Reserve statement when they set the federal funds rate. Okay, there's those two things that they primarily discuss, but they also discuss the monetary policy more broadly. Okay. Then after that release, there is a press conference where the Federal Reserve Chairman answers questions from the media about what they talked about and answers questions about their policy, right? Then a few weeks later, and I don't know the exact amount, but it's always on a Wednesday. A few weeks later, then the minutes are released. So the minutes from that 2-day meeting, they record minutes from it, and several weeks later, those minutes are released to the public. So what should be in that minutes should not be a surprise to us, but often it is. Often we find out that there was more discussion about a specific issue in the Federal Reserve meeting than was let on by, what the chairman said in the press conference and stuff. Okay, so that's what the Fed minutes is, and that's why it's kind of one of those things that's like, a lot of the time, it doesn't matter because there's no new info in it. But then there are other times where it's like, whoa, hold up, this changes everything. And like things really, really move. And there was a few of those this year, weren't they? There was one or two of those this year that there was big moves after the Fed meetings minutes. So makes sense now? That's what that's all about. Is there a way to recover? No, there's not. I wish there was. Kind of sucks when it doesn't save it, doesn't it? Oh, which reminds me, I haven't been saving. I have this strategy. I need to open it up and do it. Actually, I don't necessarily need to be. I don't need the data desperately or anything. I need to go and run some models on it now. Will you be doing a video on meta order square root law? Well, so in my video about the stylized behavior of markets, I did talk about the square root law, and I went through the what do we say? I went through the formula for it and everything, right? I probably could make a video just about the square root law, but I mean, that's kind of been on a back burner because I don't think that many people would be super interested in it, right? I've just knowing the formula and kind of how we figured it out is the important thing, right? You, the big dude. Thanks. I'm actually quite small. I'm average height, but look at my dude. Sometimes when I'm making my TikToks, I look at myself and I look at like my arms and everything. I'm like, I'm so small. Look at my arms, I look tiny. Nah. Even if I'm not, nah. I haven't been working out very much, so it definitely muscle in my arm doesn't look very much right now either. I need to be pushing the gym harder. That's why I need to go and get a swamp cooler for the garage. Although yesterday the fan wasn't up. Oh, I don't like being called boss. I'm not your boss here, right? This is a collaboration. You don't need mass right now. Well, retail sales surprise to the upside, but the market continued to chop, and Bitcoin did fall back below 30,000, and that looks like quite a bit of stops there on that, but it's not like new lows yet or anything. We should keep an eye on it. The equities are probably going to try and hold that 40-50, right? But I think that there's a good chance that by the end of the week they might stay within this range and end the week around 4,000, or let's say between 4,000 and 40-50. We'll see. Guys, it's time for me to get going. I will promise to go to bed on time today, and I'll see you tomorrow. And in the meantime, stay profitable, friends.